Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast for Fox PHL The Gambler, 1025 FM, and iHeartRadio. This is Jason Fanelli, the Esports and Gaming Insider for the station, and we are here to talk some games this evening. There has been a lot going on across esports and across video games, conferences and showcases and controversy, and it's just a lot to talk about. And I hope that this episode is informative and entertaining for you as we move right into it. We're going to have an interview with the head coach of the Seattle Surge of the Call of Duty League. We have a recap of the Xbox Game Showcase from July the 23rd. We have the first ever Cheesesteaks and Controllers review segment for a game that came out on the 23rd as well. So we're going to have a good show. But let's not waste any more time and get right into the 6 in 60 seconds. Streaming service Twitch has announced a brand new sports category, partnering with 4 of the world's biggest soccer teams, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Juventus, and Paris Saint-Germain. Meanwhile, the NBA 2K League has announced The Turn, a in-season tournament with $117,000 available to the winner. Meanwhile, the Call of Duty League's London home series was won by the Dallas Empire, but marked by controversy after the Seattle Surge lost due to a disconnect. Meanwhile, Godfall, the upcoming looter slasher, has been revealed to have no microtransactions in the entire game. Ubisoft has announced that it will not raise the price on next-gen games to $70. And finally, the Xbox Summer Game Fest event is happening now on Xbox Live, with over 70 different demos to download and try for free between now and July 27th. That is your 6 in 60 seconds. Joining me now on the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, is the head coach of the Seattle Surge of the Call of Duty League. His name is Joey DiGiacomo, but his friends know him as Nubzy. Joey, how are you, sir?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. How are you today?
I am good. So just real quick, before we get into more recent events, you guys had a month of rest between the last time you played the home series back in June and then the London series this past weekend. That's a long time to have to keep yourself going. So what were your focuses during that break to get your team ready for London and to keep them at their top form throughout that long hiatus?
We made a roster change going into the previous home series, which was Minnesota the month prior, and we showed a lot of promise moving Proto into the starting lineup. So I think people and ourselves were really excited to see more of the team play, but again, we had to wait that month period to play back in the London home series. So during that month, we just focused a lot on putting ourselves in the best position to get good at our respawn game modes, search and destroy, and kind of just keeping the spirits and mentality high, and knowing that we essentially just got the confidence from the last home series, and we knew that we could do something really impactful throughout the rest of the season.
So going into this last home series, you kind of know where you're going to be in the standings when the playoffs start in mid-August. Are you just kind of now trying to fine-tune and refine your play style going into those playoffs, or do you want to try and see if you can make a splash and maybe move up out of that bottom third?
Well, since Paris won their series against London, we don't have a chance now of getting into winners as of Sunday. So now we are kind of just looking at potentially boosting our seed up to play what could be a worse team maybe in the first losers round of playoffs. But what we're going to be focusing on mostly going into this last home series is just understanding that this is our last chance to get high-level tournament practice before playoffs itself. So kind of just fine-tuning things in that area and not necessarily making a splash in this last home series, but actually focusing on taking what we've learned and what we've improved on and showing that we can do a lot more than what we've shown in the past.
So if you had one thing that you were going to tell your team before this home series started, the one aspect of their game, the one game mode maybe, that you really want them to work on, what would that be?
I think just clutching up in hardpoint right now is the most important thing for us. The search and destroys we got this past weekend, we need to go back and sort of reevaluate how we want to do vetoes and things like that to get a better map set. But in the hardpoint game mode, we looked really good in scrimmages leading up to it and kind of just fell short and played, to be honest, very different from what we had been in practice. So kind of going back and leveling things out to make sure we're on the same exact page going into that game mode is going to be the most important thing.
Sure. Now, speaking of this past weekend, it was not without its controversy. I happened to see a video from Octane, one of your players, who kind of spoke out over something that happened. A, did he tell you he was going to do that? B, how did you advise him beforehand? And then C, what did you say to him afterwards?
Yeah, so Sam Octane is definitely an outspoken person. You know, he's been around the scene for quite a while. He as a person, he's one of my best friends, so I know how he can be. So after the controversy happened within the match, he didn't tell anyone that he was going to make a video right away, but he was very clearly outraged and made a lot of definitely bold claims and said things that we advised him not to, and he later retracted and apologized for because he knew that they were sort of outlandish things. But he didn't really say he was going to make the video until about 20 minutes prior when I was talking to him, and he kind of said, "Okay, I'll be back in about 30 minutes. I'm going to go make this video," and I was a little confused. And then I saw the video come up the next morning, and I was kind of just crossing my fingers in bed, hoping that it was nothing too harsh, but it was well put together, and I think he got a point. I think he got across rather points that he definitely has a right to say, and I think it's important for us to hold accountability in every way, including ourselves as a team. You know, our lack of professionalism this year in certain moments has definitely shown, and I think this entire year one of the league for both sides is just all about accountability and moving forward and growing each other as teams and as a league as a whole. But sort of after he put the video out, I said, you know what, Sam, the video is fine. Let's just forget this whole thing happened and just move on with the rest of our season.
Where do you stand with what he spoke about? Obviously, he feels you were very much, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Hosed, I guess, for lack of a better word. You were hosed out of a fifth map for something that was seemingly out of your control, out of your hands. Do you agree with his frustrations in not being able to replay that map? And how do those rulings and issues that have this one and the one in Minnesota that he spoke about affect your coaching approach going forward? Because it's kind of hard to plan for those things.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with everything that he said. He laid out some of the things from our season that have been pretty frustrating, in probably a better way than I think most people would have on the team. And I think he laid out a good idea of what we've gone through a lot. But as a whole, I am of the opinion that replays should always be case by case. I think every situation is unique, and I think there should be a set group and amount of people that are there to make the decisions of what should be replayed and what shouldn't, and it should be a consensus. I think the idea that every map ending in a certain way is the same is ridiculous. I think lagging out, disconnecting, things like that need to be treated in completely different aspects. So, do I think we deserved a replay right there? Absolutely. My team last season that I worked with, we were forced to replay a map where it was essentially impossible for the other team to win, but their monitor had blue screened or whatever it was. So, it's definitely. I don't think it has to be this overarching rule. I don't think there has to be one set precedent. I think it should be case by case. But as for what he had spoke about with other things and during the Minnesota home series with us being, ice or whatever against FaZe. Yeah, it's definitely frustrating things, and it's like I said before, it's going to come down to just accountability and making sure we can get things hopefully changed or fixed going forward.
Sure. Do you attribute some of the issues, especially this past one with the lagging out and not being able to participate, to playing online, or do you think that these sort of things could happen in the live stage format that they were planning all along?
Yeah, this situation in particular was extremely unique to online. This wouldn't happen on LAN at events because it's not that kind of internet. It's local connection. So
Sure.
there's a very low percentage of there's a very low chance that you would just drop the game due to lag. Online has affected a lot of things, but it's the world we live in, and we need to accept that. Um, and instead of sort of berating the format we're playing in, we should probably take advantage of it and just try to improve it as players and professionals, coaches. But if we were in person at an event, yeah, I mean, there's hiccups that happen. Like I just mentioned last year, consoles or the game application itself can sort of glitch out sometimes, and the game can crash. And in those situations, typically the team does get a replay for it. I think the overall idea is if it's a player-related issue that is out of control by the league, it's not a replay. If it's something that is under the league's control or out of the player's hands, it is a replay. I
Okay.
think that's sort of the idea behind it, and I think there is a big gray area between that where some issues could come up. I don't necessarily agree with it. Like I said before, I think it should always be case by case, and there should be a group of people that decide the outcome or the replay or whatever it is. But that's not where we're at right now. But hopefully it can change.
Sure. Makes sense to me. A couple of questions about where we're headed from here as far as the league's concerned. Are you satisfied with the playoff structure that they decided this year? Obviously, the change that they made gets you in. You weren't initially; it was just going to be 8 teams. Now they've decided to include all 12, so you benefit there. Luckily, but were there any other adjustments that you would have made, if possible, or are you cool with the hand that you've been dealt?
For the most part, I'm completely fine with the playoff structure. I am thankful that we're in it because it's all 12 teams now, but that essentially had to happen. The moment we went to online, it would have
Sure,
been unacceptable to make it just the top 8 teams
that's fair.
due to just online variables. Um, no, I think the format and the structure is completely fine. Anything I would have against it would boil down to just how me and my team have performed this year, and that's not fair to the league to say this format's bad just because of where we're positioned in the standings. That's our fault, and we just have to try to take advantage of what we can control.
Yeah, it actually leads into my next question. So we're nearing the end of the year, going into playoffs. Now that you have almost an entire season of the new Call of Duty League under your belt, what's your feeling on how this league played out, and what would your vision be for when this pandemic world that we live in is over and we can get back to the live structure as it was originally planned?
Yeah, I mean, just like any new format league, anything that's freshly created, there's going to be hiccups along the way, and there's going to be a lot of learning experiences for the people within the league and the people running it. The beginning of the season, even when we were at events on LAN, there were definitely some issues that I think just boiled down to a lack of experience, and that's something that's going to take time, and I think people should understand that. Uh, as for the switch to online and post COVID, online has been handled in it's all about perspective. I think it's been ran fine. There's definitely areas to improve, and if any team's going to complain about it the most, it would probably be my team. So me saying that should tell you that it's they're doing what they can to an extent, and I think there's definitely areas to improve. But there's not who knows if we're going to be online for next season or whatever's going to happen. It's an unpredictable world, so we're not really sure. But post COVID, I would say things are going to there's definitely going to be learning experiences from this being online that can translate into a real event environment, and I'm excited to see what they come up with and see how they can transfer this into an even better league. But as a whole, I love the league. I love the idea of the city-based franchising. I think it's all great. I think it really helps connect fans and supporters of the league itself, and I'm just really excited for the future.
Would you be open to expansion?
Absolutely.
Good,
I
because I'm
think
only asking that because Philadelphia doesn't have a team yet. and I really want one. So, good.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
if you could expand, how many would you add? 4 go to 16, more or less?
I think four. I mean, honestly, the more the merrier when it comes
Sure.
to the league expanding. But as for just a starting base, I would love 4 more teams. I think 4 more teams opens up the possibility of changing the league structure or
Okay.
the format. I think if we added 4 more teams, there could potentially, we could have discussions at that point of 4 pools, and every team goes each event. It's just 4 pools of four. Top 2 teams out of each of those pool get out, and then it's like a bracket style after that, similar to what we had in the past with events. And I think that could be something really cool for each home series. Um, so yeah, 4 more teams just off the rip would be awesome, and I would love to see new cities, new ownership, and come in and just add more to this league and make it better.
Perfect. And my last question for you. You are in the elimination side of the bracket going in, placing anywhere between 9 and 11. I don't think you'll get to 12.
No, it's not possible
I
to be
think I
12
think
for
LA
us.
is nicely comfy in that 12th spot. Um, what what are you going to do, or what does your team have to do to make a run? Because I'm really hoping that one of those 4 teams that snuck in that technically wasn't supposed to be there can make a run. And if it's the Surge, great. So what are you going to tell your team that they have to do in order to make that happen?
I've been saying the same thing for the past couple months now, even when we've faced probably the most adversity in the league and just kind of unlucky situations, I would say, that were out of our control, albeit maybe just a few. We just need to not give up on ourselves. The worst thing we can do right now is sit back and just accept the cards we were dealt or accept our fate and say, okay, we've had an unlucky season. We haven't played to our best. We haven't prepared enough. And just kind of sit back and accept failure, and that's something we can't afford to do. It's not fair to our supporters. It's not fair to our franchise. It's not fair to our league to sit here and just be one of those bottom teams that stays on the bottom. So it's going to be really important for us to just kind of focus up, put our egos aside, and say, look, we're in a bad position right now, but we can turn this all around at the biggest event of the year.
Well, I appreciate your time. I am very much rooting for you to make that run. I would, especially with all of the unfortunate circumstances that you've had to deal with this year. It's a Cinderella story in the making, man. And I really do hope that you guys can make some waves in these playoffs as soon as they start. Joey, Nubzy, thank you for your time. Good luck with the rest of the season, and we will all be watching with bated breath. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
There he is, Joey DiGiacomo, a.k.a. Nubzy, the coach of the Seattle Surge Call of Duty League team, also part of the Luminosity Gaming umbrella up there in Toronto. Tough break for them, really, in that London series to go down like that from a disconnection. And I'm really hoping that the league kind of figures out their rules in that regard, because no one is unplugging their PS4 for any reason in that situation. I don't think. It just doesn't seem right. So I hope, like I said before, that they can make a run in these playoffs. It would just be a great Cinderella story. And best of luck to them in their future matches. But enough about that. Thank you again to Mr. Giacomo for coming on. But now it's time to get out your glasses. I hope you are thirsty, because we have 3 big-time choices for you on tap. Destroy All Humans leads the charge this week, a remake of the 2005 cult classic to be made by Black Forest Games and published by THQ Nordic. It is a third-person action game where you play as a alien named Crypto, or Cryptosporidium 137, and wreak havoc on the human race while trying to take over the planet. Meanwhile, Hellpoint, a indie game that releases on Thursday, calls itself a dark and challenging action RPG set in a heavily atmospheric sci-fi universe where the line between science and occult is blurred. Finally, for the fighting game or giant mech fans, we have Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. Max Boost On, that mouthful of a 3D fighting game. coming this week to the PlayStation 4. And honestly, if you're a fighting game fan, there's not a whole lot to look forward to, so why not try this and see if it is up your alley. It kind of reminds me of the old Virtual On games from the arcades back in the day, but could be something worth taking a look at. Regardless, you've got action RPGs in an occult science universe, you've got fighting mechs, or you've got aliens invading. There's plenty to fill your cup with, so tell me, what's on tap for you? From what is coming out this week to things that are coming out a little bit further in the future, let's now talk about the Xbox Games Showcase that kicked off July the 23rd, Thursday at noon Eastern Time on the Xbox YouTube and Twitch channels. It was supposed to be a big E3-style conference with games that they are coming out with, both first-party and third-party. First-party being studios that Xbox owns, third-party being partners like EA Sports or Bandai Namco or Capcom for Street Fighter, stuff like that. So the show was heavily hyped to feature Halo Infinite, and other than that, we didn't really know anything else. I was hoping going into the show that it would start with Halo Infinite, and sure enough, it did. First thing we got was about a 15-minute gameplay demo of the next Halo, and to be completely honest, it looked like Halo, which is exactly what Halo fans want. It looked cool to me. I did like the nod toward the open-ended mission structure where there are multiple points on a map that you can capture and you can go to them at your leisure. You don't have to just follow the paths that it tells you to take and do the mission as instructed. You can have a little freedom with it. And with that comes a bigger map. The map that they showed in this demo had a nice bit of size to it, actually showed the topography and the mountains of the land that you were in, so you knew what hills you had to climb or what valleys you would be going into. We saw brutes are back for the first time. Those big hulking gorilla-looking monsters are back fighting Master Chief for the first time. There was a brief interesting moment where one was charging at the player, and the player kind of shot a couple rounds into his leg, which stunned him and had him topple over and gave the player enough time to take him out. That is an interesting little nuance for combat that I enjoyed. I love little details like that. After that, we saw some new guns. We saw a grappling hook, which allowed Master Chief to fly up onto higher areas. And then we saw the big bad, the leader of the Banished, give this whole speech about how Master Chief better be ready to fight and all this other stuff. So it was exactly what people expected to start the show. The nice Halo Infinite demo brought people in. Still slated for holiday 2020. No specific dates yet, which is disappointing, but it looked good. It's exactly what you would want from a Halo demo, and I imagine that all of the fans are very happy with what they saw today. Would they rather be playing it? Absolutely. But it's a start, and you really can't fault them for that. And then we moved on to the unknown, because the rest of the show, we really didn't expect anything. We really didn't know what to make of it or what was going to come, because they haven't really said much about the games on Xbox One X. We had that little third-party showcase with Scorn, and it was supposed to show the first gameplay of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but then it showed like a trailer with gameplay in it, but it wasn't really actual gameplay. It was very bizarre. That kind of shut people off. But this was their chance to really make up for it, to really come in and show us a lot of cool stuff. And they did. They had some very interesting trailers. One for State of Decay 3. State of Decay is a big, open-ended, online zombie apocalypse game. The third one was announced with a pre-rendered trailer. It was not a gameplay trailer, of a woman in a snowy valley next to a bonfire. A wolf shows up. She screams at the wolf and it goes away. And then she follows a blood trail hunting something, and she stumbles upon a kill where it's a wolf being eaten by a zombie deer instead of the other way around. I thought that was a nice little juxtaposition. And then the deer roars, and that's the end of the trailer. So State of Decay 3 coming soon. That's very cool. The new Forza Motorsport we saw for the first time, and that's just Forza. Forza, beautiful racing games. Some of the best graphics you'll ever see in a video game. From Forza, and this one looked right in that lane, no pun intended. So that was very cool. And then we got to Everwild, which is the next game by Rare, who has been around forever since the Super Nintendo days, made Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, created Banjo-Kazooie on the Nintendo 64, so on and so forth. And I'm not really entirely sure what to make of this game. So this was a trailer. It looked like it was in the graphical engine that will play, but it was all pre-rendered scenes. There wasn't any like actual gameplay that was happening. And it was very earthy, like ritualistic, natural. They look like shamans or some sort of salt of the earth people with these fantastical looking creatures, big and small. There was a frog looking thing at one point that opened its mouth and a bunch of orange fish fell out. So I guess he's making fish or something like that. And there's this little deer that something happened to, and they were able to revive it, which pleased the deer spirit. And then we saw the title. So there wasn't really a whole lot to go off of there. So that's 2 trailers now where you're not really sure what Everwild is. I would like to see more. I would like to know more. But I don't know what to make of it. So, cool, but let's see more. Next was a game called Tell Me Why by a company called Don't Nod Entertainment, who specializes in interactive narrative experiences, almost like you're playing a movie where you press a button to make a choice, or you press a button real fast to do an action during an action scene, and your choices affect the rest of the game. So this particular one is notable because one of the characters is transsexual. In the cutscene or in flashbacks, you see him as a girl, and then in the current day, you see him as a male, and it's an interesting choice. I can't think of many video games that have made this choice before. I'm all for it. I think it's very, very cool. I'm all about that representation. Definitely one that needs more representation in video games, more respectful representation in video games, just to clarify. So I'm all about this. And the fact that the developer then went on and put a Q&A on their website, or an FAQ, with questions about the game that also constituted spoilers, just to get ahead of some of the questions that some people may have, like, is there any transphobia to worry about? Is there any homophobia in the homosexual character? Do they encounter these things? And they laid it right out that there isn't any direct. There is some direct references to the male character being trans, but it's not outright transphobia. It's more of people who knew that person when they were younger and just hasn't accepted. It's an interesting approach that they're taking, and I'm wondering if it's going to pay off. But we'll find out when the first episode comes out on August 27th. So good for them, good for Dotnod for taking these strides. Life is Strange was a very, very impactful game for a lot of people, and I hope that Tell Me Why is the same. Next, we had an update for Ori and the Will of the Wisps, a platforming game that came out back in March. It will be enhanced for the new Series X with a top refresh rate and better graphics, so that's pretty cool. Got some DLC for the Outer Worlds. If you like shooter games, you like open world games, and you like games with choice, I definitely recommend the Outer Worlds. It's a very, very funny, very humorous game. Getting new DLC in September, so play it now before that comes out. That's a very cool game. Then we show a little more of Grounded, Obsidian's solo co-op adventure game featuring kids that get shrunk to mini size and are out in the backyard fighting against bugs among the grass. Very Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibe going on there, but it looked very cool. And then finally, the same company showed off a brand new RPG that they're working on. They're kind of known for RPGs. They just haven't worked on one in a while. This is a medieval first-person game, it looks like, called Avowed, set in the universe of a game that they also make called Pillars of Eternity, so there's a little bit of familiarity for those that play Pillars, which is cool. Not a whole lot there either, just a very brief trailer, some references to first-person, and the character drew a little sigil and had magic in his hand, so not a whole lot more, not a whole lot besides that, and that's kind of like the theme of some of these games where you see these trailers, doesn't have any gameplay in it, and you don't know what exactly these games are made of, but you're not going to know until they show more. So right now all you have is just pre-rendered hype trailers. And if that's what they want to show us, fine, but eventually we're going to need more. The next game is one that caught me off guard for that exact reason. I thought it was just going to be another one of those trailers where you just see certain scenes pre-rendered and it's not an actual gameplay trailer. So it's a game called As Dusk Falls. It's a studio called Interior/Night or Interior Night. They're billing this as an original interactive drama, which is interesting. We've seen interactive narrative games before. We just talked about one with Tell Me Why. So what makes this different? So, based on the trailer that we saw, it looked like they were moving paintings as if a film was shot and then someone took paint over the film and painted in all these different looks. And the film didn't move in real time as if it was a movie. It moved like a couple frames at a time. So someone would be facing the camera and then they would turn away, but you wouldn't see their full range of motion. You would just see the head then in a different position, if that makes sense. Turns out that art style is going to be how the game looks. I found that to be astounding. If they could pull that off and make the game, make a good story with that graphics package, definitely going to take a lot of people by surprise. So As Dusk Falls is one you should have on your radar. Then we had an update on Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga. I cannot say enough about Hellblade 1, Senua's Sacrifice. You all should play it if you're listening to this. But they said not enough about Hellblade 2. All they told us is that there was a behind-the-scenes coming up about how the game is set in Iceland using actual real-world locations in Iceland. Great. That's it. That's all we got, and I was hoping for more. That was one of the games I was looking the most forward to. I'm glad we got something, but I do feel a little selfish in that regard. I would have liked to have seen more Hellblade 2 because the first one, like I said, is just out of this world. Next, we got an update for a game called Psychonauts 2. The first one was a bit of a cult hit in the mid-2000s on PlayStation 2 and Xbox by a company called Double Fine, which Xbox now owns, that developer. Jack Black was revealed to be in the game, playing a voice called the Mote of Light, and the trailer is exactly what you would expect from a game called Psychonauts. A lot of trippy, psychedelic things happening, and Jack Black is singing a song over all of it, a very catchy song that people were already talking about on Twitter after it came on. So definitely one to look at if you want to trip out for a little while and you don't need any drugs. You don't want any drugs. You just want to trip out for a bit. But Psychonauts 2 is one to look at only because it's such a well-received sequel. Like, people who played the first game have been clamoring for this forever, and they're finally getting it. So, could be good. And then we come to Destiny 2. Now, Destiny 2 has been around for at least a year now, maybe more, and has had 3 or 4 expansions. Destiny 2 is not new. But what is new is that all of the game and all of the expansions are coming to Xbox Game Pass, which I will talk about a little further at the end. But Xbox Game Pass, this is a huge coup for them. The new expansion, Beyond Light, that's coming out soon, will be included in that Xbox Game Pass inclusion, which is insane. And again, I'll get to that towards the end. Next, we had another surprise sequel in Stalker 2. I don't know much about the first Stalker. I understand that it was very, very good. Takes place in like a Chernobyl-style city. It was affected by a nuclear meltdown, and there's mutants, and there's people trying to survive. Things you would expect, but this was a little more serious. But Stalker 2 is one to keep your eye on. Next, you had Warhammer 40k Darktide. Warhammer 40k is one of the largest franchises in the world you've probably never heard of. And Darktide looks like a first-person co-op shooter with a lot of monsters to take care of. I was kind of getting some Left 4 Dead vibes on that, but I'd like to see some gameplay first. Next is an enhancement to a Tetris game. I know, Tetris. That Tetris, the Tetris that's been around forever, called Tetris Effect Connected. Tetris Effect is one of the best games on the VR, the PlayStation VR. So this game is not VR capable because the Xbox doesn't have VR yet. But this one will have multiplayer, where players can play together on one board to try and eliminate lines in Tetris. The soundtrack is there. The Tetris Effect soundtrack is incredible, by the way. That is one I would recommend looking into either on YouTube or I believe it's on Spotify. That soundtrack is just dynamite. Definitely one worth looking into. Next, we had a game by the developers of a franchise called SteamWorld Dig. This showed a ship approaching a planet in a big open world. And there's this gross, goopy, like black, gunky stuff that she is able to absorb with her glove. Eventually, she cleans up all of the gunk, and a tree grows. But then a monster comes out of some gunk behind her and roars. And then the game is called The Gunk. So they really didn't have to look far for a title of that game there. One that's pretty interesting. Next we have this one here could be one of the it's like 4 more left, but this one right here could be one of the most interesting games of the entire conference. And this is called The Medium by a company called Bloober Team, who is known for horror style games. Now, the Medium is a game where you see a woman in 2 different planes of existence. She's in a realistic world with, in a city, urban setting with buildings and fauna and flowers everywhere. Like a normal cityscape. But then in this alternate world, she's in this like crazy paranormal, scary world, like a parallel universe. She's in the same place in both universes, and both of these worlds are rendered together. So you'll be running them simultaneously as you play. It's a very interesting concept, especially if you can see both at the same time and you're focusing on one but still moving the other, which was hinted at in this trailer. I wonder how they're going to pull this off. I imagine that the Xbox Series X allows them to do that a little bit more easily than before. But this is one I definitely circled as something to keep an eye on. And I'm not even that big into horror. Horror is really not my thing. I scare easily. But yeah, that's The Medium is one you should have on your radar. Definitely one that I would consider. So then we had 2 updates on 2 big time games from other parts of the world that then are now coming to Xbox One or Xbox Series X. One is already here, and that's Phantasy Star Online 2. That's getting a new expansion called New Genesis. Looks like a brand new world with new enemies that are humongous, tower over the heroes. So that's pretty cool. And then finally, Crossfire X, which is a big multiplayer shooter franchise in China, is coming over here, but also getting a single-player campaign mode made by Remedy, who made Control, one of the best games of last year, as well as Alan Wake and Max Payne and Quantum Break a little more recently. So that's one. The multiplayer looks pretty standard, to be completely honest, but the campaign by Remedy, I have to try it because Remedy is really, really good. And then the presentation wrapped up. They said they had one more thing to show us, and that was a small teaser for the return of Fable, a long-time Xbox RPG franchise that went dormant for a long time. There was one called Fable Legends that was supposed to come out and never did. There was a card game called Fable Fortune that kind of came and went away. So this is a return to form for the Fable franchise. It will be developed by Xbox's Playground Games, which previously was working on Forza, which is an interesting transition. I wonder how that's going to go for them. But it was a brief teaser showing the world, showing a sword buried in the sand, a little fairy flying around, admiring everything that she sees. She goes to take a sniff of a flower, and she's eaten by a frog. That was it. Brief trailer, shows the title. That's all we need. It said 2021, I believe, so we'll find out more about it next year. Very exciting to see that it is being made, however. It's good that the Fable franchise is back. I know a lot of people were very excited about that one. So that was the end of the show. All in all, from top to bottom, I'd give it a solid B grade. There was something for everyone. If you like your narrative experience, they were there. If you like your high-action shooters, they were there. If you like Tetris, that was there. If you like your quirky indie games, they were there. Fable is coming back, which is definitely worth coming into. But something that really puts it over the edge for me and makes it a B, even close to a B+, is that every single one of those games that I just described to you is included if you have an Xbox Game Pass subscription. They're all going to be there on day one. That's absurd. The fact that you can pay $14.99 a month for Xbox's online services, the Game Pass service with all the games available to download at your fingertips for both the Xbox and the PC if you're a PC player, the Project X Cloud cloud service where you can play video games on your phone using a Bluetooth controller, and now all of these games on top of it the day they come out. So you're telling me, because I have a Game Pass subscription, I technically can already play all of these games day one? That's massive. It's massive to the point where obviously they were more focused on selling the service of Game Pass and how lucrative that is than the actual console itself. And by that I mean they didn't announce a price for the console, which is a big detriment, or a release date. However, with their focus on the service, I'm beginning to wonder just how much this console is going to be. Because if they would be willing to release it at a loss and recoup those funds through the Game Pass services they would be gaining in the process, I might have overshot when I said $500. I think that's being a little optimistic. But it's definitely possible just by the way they were describing these games and the way they described this service. So Xbox came out. They impressed. They showed us some of their stuff. I am very much looking forward to what the next presentation they have. They're going to have one so they can tell us the release date and how much these things are going to cost. And yeah, so Xbox did really well today. I'm very pleased with what I saw. You can go check out the full conference on YouTube at the Xbox YouTube channel, or IGN has it, GameSpot has it. Wherever you get your gaming news, you can watch the whole thing. It's about 58 minutes, give or take, just under an hour. And it's a good way to update yourself on what's coming to Xbox. So good job, Microsoft. Good job, Xbox. The gamer in me is very happy with what you presented today, and I am looking forward to what's coming next. So from there, that is a recap of the Xbox Showcase. If you did not get to see it today, earlier today, I'm taping this on the 23rd, that is what happened. And now we're going to move on to the first ever Cheesesteaks and Controllers review. Let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the brand new review segment of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, which will hereby be known as Hot Off the Grill. This segment will be me reviewing a game as I would for the publications that I write for. We'll go over what to do in the game, how it controls, the environment, all those things for something that either has just come hot off the grill or that will soon be coming hot off the grill. That way you know what you should be looking forward to in the near gaming future. And our first candidate for review in this brand new hot off the grill segment is a game by Phobia Games, published by Devolver Digital, and it is called Carrion. Now, Carrion is a 6-hour adventure puzzle game. We're basically, the easiest way to describe it, and way that it's been described on social media, is think of the movie The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, with that alien life form that deformed the people that it infected and became super monstrosity, gross horror, but you play as the Thing. You play as the monstrosity. They call it reverse horror in its trailers and press releases. So instead of being the scientists who are scared of this thing, you're wreaking havoc on this facility. You break out of your little test tube at the very beginning, and you're this small little creature. You immediately can move freely through the little lanes until you break out into an open area. And then as you play, you gain more pieces of yourself until you become this enormous, god-awful monstrosity that moves through these levels and grabs people, unsuspecting people, and just devours them. It is gross. It is a bloody, gory mess. It is not for the squeamish. It is not for the faint of heart. I'll get that right off my chest, right off the bat. It earned every letter of that mature rating through its grossness, and a lot of the gore is pixelated, so it's not a realistic. It's not like 3D super rendered or anything like that. It's 2D pixel graphics, like an old school NES game. So you're not seeing anything too overtly graphic. If you grab a scientist or a person and you bite them, you do bite them in half. So you will see half of a person over there and half of a person over there, and you can, through some finagling, rip the head off of your victims. But that's another point. There are a couple little things. I mean, I wouldn't let your kids play it. I wouldn't let my kids play it. They're way too young. But it's not like super duper awful graphic. I have played more graphic titles than this. That's not to say it's not gross. It's not gory. It absolutely is. You could go into a room with 10 or 12 different people and just mow them all down, eating as you go. And eating people is your health, so you will be doing that as you take damage throughout the game. But it's definitely an interesting take. I do want to say that. It's interesting to get this side of the monster trope. We've seen enough games where people are being terrorized by monsters, whether it's Resident Evil's zombies or Dino Crisis's dinosaurs back in the day, or even Until Dawn, that PlayStation 4 story game where it was basically like a teen slasher movie that you played. That had the Wendigos, those big, gross, humanoid monster things. But we never actually got to play as the monster. So to be able to do that here is sort of freeing. It's like, yeah, I'm the guy who has to break out of here, the thing that has to break out of here, and I just want to see you try and stop me. Now, initially, when you first start, you don't have a lot of powers. The only thing you can really do is grab things with one of your tentacles and drag them towards you. You can pull levers, you can open doors, you can throw things, but you can't really do a whole lot. Eventually, you start to gain more powers. You gain the ability to go invisible for a brief time, so you can get past laser beam barriers. You gain the ability to roar and find the next checkpoint that you're looking for. You gain the ability to pull open wooden barriers with big tentacles. You gain the ability to produce big, sharp tentacles out of your entire body and just roll people over. There's a whole bunch of things that you gain as you play the game. And then there are 9 containment units hidden throughout that are extras, where if you collect them, you get even more powers. And that's mostly, though, like more health or more electricity for those moves, like going invisible. They require energy. The energy bar gets bigger. Things like that. So there are things to find in this world, like the containment units. And there are power-ups to gain as you progress through. But the world itself is not very big. There's not a whole lot of world to take in. I completed the entire game and was able to collect all 21 achievements in 6 hours of gameplay. So it's not very long of a game compared to other adventures. But it's definitely a unique one. Watching this blob move around the screen at my will, zipping through these big areas or shooting through chutes and just maneuvering all around, no matter how big and gross he gets, takes some major animation savvy. And these guys at Phobia nailed it. The atmosphere is definitely there. Listening to its little tendril shoot out as it walks through a corridor is gross, but great at the same time. You still get that tension, even though you're the monster instead of the human victims, of having to worry about the enemies in an area when you get there. Because as you progress, first it's just people with guns. Then you have armored soldiers where if you kill them, you can't eat them. You can only bite them to neutralize them. And then you have those soldiers but with flamethrowers, and if you get caught on fire, then you have to go into water to put it out, or it will kill you eventually. And then you eventually have mechs with these massive chain guns that just barrage you with bullets until you're dead. So you're not all powerful, despite being the beast. You're not able to just run through these people at will for most of the game. There are areas where you can, and they do it on purpose, but it's not. You're not just going to terrorize all these people with no repercussions just because you're the monster, and that is cool. One thing that I do not like about this game is that it gets repetitive. A lot of these areas, even though they're themed, so you have like the botanical gardens, which is like a garden sector. You have the uranium mines, which is an underground mine. You have the main frontier marshland, it's called, which is like the main hub area that you keep going back to. So you have different areas that look different, but as far as structure goes, they are not very different. You're doing the same things in each of these areas. You're just trying to escape, basically, and in order to do that, you have to find these little sections of the level that you can sneak into, and when you sneak into them, you basically infect the wall that you snuck into, and that eventually opens a door somewhere. If you get to all of them, it opens a door that goes back to the main area, and you've successfully infected or breached that area, the smaller area, like the botanical gardens or something like that. There are 9 areas total, if I recall correctly, maybe less. And then a couple you go back to. There's one in particular I could think of where you go there, you do the thing, and then 2 areas later you're back there just in a different section doing other things. So there is a little bit of backtracking a la a Metroid or a Castlevania, which is neat. Keeps you in the level, keeps you in the world, and that I appreciate. And despite the repetition, it's not something where it was so repetitive that I felt like I was out of it. There were some times where I thought the game got a little difficult, particularly in moving the monster when it's giant and unruly, when you're trying to hide from one of those soldiers with a machine gun or one of the mechs, and you think that you've gotten yourself into a pocket, but there's one little section of the monster that's hanging out, and the enemy just targets that, and you're dead. That's a little frustrating. You're trying to get away, you're trying to do what you have to do, but this thing is just so humongous towards the end of the game that it's really hard to find effective cover. So that there is some frustration there, and some frustration to the point where after it happened a couple times, I would quit for the night and come back to it the next day. So it's not the kind of frustration where you can just shrug it off. It's legitimate, like, I want to throw my controller anger. You should never throw your controller. I do not endorse that. But it's that kind of like, oh man, this really sucks. I'm turning it off for now. I will say that the ending of the game is brilliant, where everything kind of comes together at the end. And the way that the game actually ends, which I will not spoil here, obviously, blew my mind. I thought that was a really, really cool choice that they made in that ending, particularly with things that happened throughout the game, kind of teasing it or leading into it. I really, really, really enjoyed that idea, and I'm glad that they opened it in such a way that it's definitive but open-ended. Like, you know what's coming next if they were to ever make a second one, but you're not entirely sure how it's going to happen. There could be myriad of ways that they decide to do it, and I really applaud whoever wrote the story for choosing to end it that way. I really, really caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for it, but it was awesome. So kudos to the narrative designers of Carrion. My final grade for Carrion would be a solid B, which I've given 2 Bs in this episode now I'm realizing. But my grade for Carrion, the first ever hot off the grill review for the Cheesesteaks Controllers podcast, is a B for Carrion because playing as the monster is fun. Getting these items to grow yourself is fun. Traversing this area is fun. But the repetition cannot be ignored. Some of the frustration is real. And the world is not as large as I would have liked. I would like to explore more. Despite the repetition, despite the frustration, I would like to explore more as this monster. I would have liked other puzzles than just find a way to open this door. Find a way to get to that switch. Find a way to get to that different kind of switch. Find a way to get to 2 different switches. Get rid of the... later on in the game, there's one where a bomb attaches itself to you and you have to blow up things strategically while not killing yourself. There's a power for that. Just a little more variety in its puzzles and not so heavy on, just get through this door. To cut off some of that repetition. And maybe bigger holes for me to hide in so the mechs don't get me. That's it's a nitpick, I know that. But all in all, I did enjoy Carrion enough to play it to completion with all achievements. And that's saying something. A lot of times I'll play a game and then when I beat it, that's it. I won't want to go back. Here, I beat it with 2 achievements missing, and I went back and I did them. That's how into this game I was. So it's a solid B grade from me. If I had to put a number on it, it would be 85 out of 100, or 8.5 out of 10, B, whatever you want to call it. Solid B game, definitely worth the $19.99 it costs to pick it up. Or if you're on Xbox Game Pass, you get it as part of that package, so download it. It is playable on PC with both controller and keyboard and mouse. I played both. Being more familiar with controller, I found controller to be easier, but if you're more familiar with keyboard, it will suit you as well. At first, I thought that was a big negative, the control scheme, but then when I realized you could play with controller too, it just comes down to personal preference. So I didn't really care too much about that. So I'll forgive it for that. I'll forgive it for the weird keyboard and mouse controls. It might just be my issue, not the keyboard's issue. But again, Carrion from Devolver Digital and Phobia Games, solid B, 85 or 8.5, depending on the score scheme that you like. Definitely look into it. Definitely pick it up and see how you enjoy being a monster for once instead of being the ones hunting it down. The new perspective is refreshing. Playing as the monster is great. And it's a bloody, gory mess, so be ready for that. With that, the first ever Hot Off the Grill review is completed. And with that, we are at the end of episode 6 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. It has been a hoot, ladies and gentlemen. I am always happy to come on and talk about video games and esports for you. I hope that you take this information and run with it. Do your research on the Xbox Game Showcase. Do your research on Carrion to see if it's up your alley. Do your research on the Seattle Surge and the Call of Duty League, which ends this week with the Toronto home series. And keep playing, keep enjoying, and keep listening. We have a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline coming up. More interviews, more reviews, and more of the gaming and esports goodness that we just love here at Cheesesteaks and Controllers and Fox PHL the Gambler. So with that, this has been episode 6. I am Fox PHL the Gambler's esports and gaming insider, Jason Fanelli. I hope that you all have a great week. Thank you so much for listening as always, and we will catch you again next time. See you.